Sure.
It's interesting.
Is this your television debut?
I feel like Ron Burgundy.
This thing goes out to like a lot of the major networks. Like, this will probably be on NBC, ESPN. We shouldn't give them free press, but
CNN, maybe?
Yeah, probably. So we're good? We're live? You're live. You're on. Nice. Actually, I'm going to hold it closer. Welcome, everybody. Episode 5, Grab a Beer with GraySquare. Joe Golonka here. We're coming from Boston, Massachusetts. Jay's calling me. Mute my everything here. The first thing I wanted to point out, I had a couple people reach out to me over the past couple weeks and say, you guys aren't even drinking beer in the episodes or whatever, because it's like the coffee mugs. So to give like the backstory there, when we first set up the very first episode, Catalina wanted like props because it would look cool on the little table we had, and so she had the suggestion of coffee mugs, and I'm like, I'm not doing this like with coffee. We're going to drink beer, so we put them in the WeWork one.
The previous episodes, you had like the whiskey bottle in it. I like that.
Yeah, in Philly. I
like that. You know, I have one of those at home. I could have brought it.
You can do whiskey shots the whole time. That's a different show entirely.
That could be. You know, it could be like get drunk with GraySquare. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Whiskey with GraySquare.
Whiskey with GraySquare.
Well, let's jump into it. So, to get started here, to set up Joe. Again, we're coming from his office in Boston, Massachusetts. A little bit about Joe. He's one of the founding members of the company, started the business with us. Before this, about, 5 years experience before he got in here?
Yeah.
Before this, something like that?
I came in at 2013.
Yeah, so 5 years. Joe currently manages everything Boston for us. His project is on pace to do about $1 million in revenue for GraySquare and around $7 million in revenue for the client. I did some math on that, so I could impress people with your metrics here. Joe graduated school in May and came to us right out. And not to boost his ego too much or set you up too much. There's not a ton, I don't think, 23, 24-year-old dudes out there running projects that are doing $7 million in revenue. So I thought it'd be cool to have him on and give some insight on what he's done to get to where he's at, a little story on him. Anybody that comes to Boston, you'll get to meet him. So just to introduce him to the crowd here. So I'll let you jump it off, man. Tell us about yourself. What a little about your background before you got in GraySquare here.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start. I mean, I don't have I don't have a background that's as long as you guys, obviously, in the industry and whatnot. But came into the industry in 2013 with you and Tim at SMGI when you guys were running the company there. And before that, I was just like any other kid out there. I mean, I'm not setting myself apart or anything, but just went to a typical state school.
Sure.
Out in Pennsylvania. It was called Bloomsburg University.
People know. Got a lot of people in Philly.
Let them know.
People know who it is. Yeah.
Representing Bloomsburg. I mean, I guess that's really what I'm going off here is like Bloomsburg wasn't necessarily my thing.
Sure.
I felt like I wasn't really progressing there at all, and it was just sort of like another high school. Like the general vibe with school nowadays is you go to class and you memorize a PowerPoint and you regurgitate that information on the test, and then you pass with
Get
B's.
your grades so you don't
and then you have the fancy piece of paper and you're like, look what I did. But my I guess my idea behind it was like that's a very it's a very follower mentality.
Yeah.
It's like you're able to meet deadlines and do that. That's really cool.
Sure.
I felt like they were just preparing me for a 9-to-5 in a cubicle, and I didn't really feel comfortable with that at all. So so what I ended up doing was after my freshman year, I realized very early on that I didn't necessarily want that. So I thought to myself, what's the easiest way to set myself apart from my peers? The people that are just going to school to get marginal jobs and live their lives like that. What can I do? And I guess the easiest way that I did that was just look for internships. So I found you guys at SMGI, and really the rest is history, I guess. But we did really, really well within those 4 months.
Yeah.
And unfortunately went back to school. I mean, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but I wasn't too. I wasn't
you
too
weren't a
thrilled
fan though.
about it.
I used to hear from you like once a week, like I should just come back.
You're right. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but you know, I was sort of pressured into it because that's really what you do in society nowadays.
Sure.
Is you get the fancy piece of paper, you pay your taxes, and then you die.
That's like the only. Is that like the only option for people? That's it.
You do the same job for X amount of years. You get a $10,000 promotion, and that's it. But so I went back to school and did my whole sophomore year, and I'll be honest, I wasn't necessarily happy at all. It was pretty miserable. And what I ended up deciding on doing was leaving school after sophomore year. Sort of took that deep dive and figured myself out, and did something that I had never done before. Sort of jumped outside of my comfort zone, and came working back with you and Tim for about a year. Made it nearly into a management position where I was learning everything that it took to actually run a successful office in the industry. And, after we had separated and did our own thing for a couple of years, I went back to Penn State, finished up my my education there, which was, I don't regret that. Penn State was actually a good time. It was definitely a lot more interesting than Bloomsburg was. But finished up my education there and then got the call from you.
Suckered him back into
I was suckered
starting
back
a company.
into it, yes. It's actually pretty ironic. I got the call from you when I was in spring break.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you had to like sober up to take the phone call.
Yeah, so got the call and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll stop my job search. Why not?
Sure.
Because I knew I was going to be good at it, and I mean, truthfully, learned everything I know from you and Tim and all the other partners. So I figured, why not? And, came back into Philly, helped run the market there when we were getting started up. I mean, you guys had already gotten the general gist of it by the time I got there, but wanted to be an integral part of the team, so tried my best, did my best, and then Tim came to me with Boston, which was, a blessing, so to say. It was really, really cool of him, and here I am.
Nice.
So that is the background of Joe.
There it is. So you obviously started, not necessarily with us in GraySquare, but in your introduction into the industry was through what at least at first looked like a pretty traditional internship opportunity.
Yes.
Like that was the pitch, so to say, is this is an internship. What do you think? Obviously, there's a couple sides of an internship. Either it turns into something great, or you just learn stuff. What do you think the value of just overall getting into, getting an internship? What do you think the value is? I guess on both sides of it, good and bad.
Good and bad of an internship?
Well, I mean, maybe the value of it if it turns into something long term, and the value of it if it doesn't.
Truthfully, Truthfully, I mean, the long-term thing about an internship is, truthfully, I think I was a rarity in that case, or an outlier, so to say. Particularly in our industry, it's pretty common that an intern, just learns a lot here and then goes somewhere else and implements what they learn here. But I sort of had a knack for it, I guess. Which is the reason why I came back. But I mean, the value in the internship is definitely the reason why I stuck around for so long. And the reason why I'm where I'm at now is because the amount of things that you learn doing what we do is exponentially more, so to say, than what you would receive in a college, traditional college atmosphere. Not that I'm downplaying college or anything. I feel like I'm hating on college and whatnot, but to a certain degree. But I think what we learn here in this job, particularly, or internship, so to say, is what it takes to actually be successful in the future. Not just how to be, a quality manager, or how to do X, Y, and Z in regards to reporting or something like that. That would actually requires from the job of being in management, running your own market. Aside from that, you learn in the internship specifically of what I learned back in 2013 is the core concepts that really make you a better individual in the future, as opposed to just, punching numbers in an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
So I think that's where the value really comes into play, is learning how to interact with different types of people and being able to apply that, in any situation that you might find yourself in.
I think it speaks a lot to the internship in like our industry? How about just in general? Like if I'm 19-year-old communications major, and what's the value of internship to internship? Like, what do you think somebody gets out of, like, not necessarily here, but just like in general?
Just an average internship.
Like if you had gotten an internship somewhere else,
sure.
What do you think something you gain? Like even with like a large corporation, what do you think you gain out of like seeing, learning, being a part of something like that?
I think the number one thing is understanding that it's not exactly what you're learning in school. It's
so you think it gives you more of, like, regardless of industry, it gives you more transferable skills no matter what you get into?
Yeah,
I'd agree with
I'd
that.
say so. Applicable skills is what I would say. Like, as opposed to just learning information from a PowerPoint and then regurgitating it back and on a test and then getting graded on that. In an internship, you actually learn the ins and outs of what would make you like effective in
whatever
industry,
that role
in whatever
is.
That role is exactly.
Yeah,
so like
yeah.
what actually goes into being more effective than maybe someone else that's in the same position as you, you know, and what you can focus on becoming a better, not only like person, but also an employee. Like, how can you set yourself apart from other people is what an internship, I think, really means to me.
I think the other side of it too that I always advise people of is, like, I think worst case scenario, you get an internship at Bank of America, for example, because you're a finance major. The best thing that happens is you start out in a pretty decent role in Bank of America and you expedite your path to CEO by 5 years. I think that's best case scenario. I think worst case scenario, which isn't all that bad, is you learn something you don't like, that you don't want to do. And you do that on somebody else's dime, as opposed to when you're out of school, paying your bills, doing your thing. You learn that earlier on. I think it's a worst case.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more valuable understanding what you don't like than it is of what you like. Yeah. Because understanding what you don't like allows you to...
It's super valuable.
Allows you to map out exactly where you should be looking.
Yeah, for sure.
I think being so young in a position where I am, it's allowed me the opportunity to learn a lot about myself and what I want in the future. And understanding what I don't like about, what not only my job entails of what I could potentially
like
be
your other options.
Exactly. So like, I think that's it's a lot more.
Yeah, right. You can swear on things.
It's a lot more valuable than just doing one job for 10 years and that's what
kind of
you
get
do.
a taste of it first.
I think it allows you not to be complacent.
Sure.
Is what I'm trying to get at.
That's understandable. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Next question here. So, I read an article from USA Today. It's a couple years old, so I don't know how factual it is today, but it was in whatever year it came out. It said that the number one choice for a major for college students was business administration / management. A lot of schools kind of interchange them.
Yeah.
So, as somebody that has spent a little over a year in a management role, what advice do you have for somebody getting into it? Not related to, like, if you want to manage a GraySquare office, but like just somebody coming into the workforce, managing people, or thinking that's what you want to do. Like, what advice would you have for somebody like getting into it? Or maybe some best practices?
There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn. That's a tough question.
Appreciate it. I made it up myself.
Yeah, look at you, man. You're a great interviewer.
Coming in hot.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is there's a lot to learn. There's a huge learning curve. When I came into the industry in 2013, I was just sort of naturally good at it. I picked up on the job relatively quickly. Sure. In a management position,
like the entry level role.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Where you would see yourself in an internship, it's relatively easy to pick up on the role.
Sure.
Because there's not as much demanded of you. When you move into a position where you're managing other individuals, first of all, there's a lot more responsibility.
Sure.
Because if you really think about it, you have other people's livelihoods in your hands that you're responsible for. And secondly, there's a lot more that goes into it. There's like client interaction, actually, doing the entire recruiting process, or you're really managing your own entire operation. So like, exactly what we teach from day one in the entry level position is very entrepreneurial. It's, you sort of have to be solution oriented as opposed to problem conscious.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's the biggest thing.
I think what a lot of people see when they look at like the title of management, like if I'm in school and I'm pursuing management, I think what a lot of people see is I get to tell people what to do.
Yeah.
So that sounds pretty sweet. How far do you think that is from reality? I know that's obviously a part of it is decision making. I guess here's a better question.
Yeah.
What was different than you expected? Like a year in, what went differently than you thought it was going to go?
If I just told someone,
managing people, not like industry stuff.
If I just told someone what to do, what incentivization do they have to actually listen to me?
Okay. So it's harder to get people to listen.
Aside from my title.
Yeah.
Because that was one of my biggest problems coming into the business, especially in 2013 and 2014.
Yeah.
I was so young, and I was also training people that were 6, 7, 8 years older than me.
Sure.
So establishing a sense of dominance is not just based upon the title.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Establishing a sense of, I don't want to say dominance because that sounds like it is like a negative.
No, I know what you
towards
mean.
that.
I think what you're going after is like there's people listen to people for different reasons. Like like the levels of leadership. Like I listen to somebody because I have to, or else I don't have a job anymore.
Exactly.
Versus I listen to somebody because I believe in where they're going and what they're trying to accomplish long term, and a lot of layers in between.
Yeah.
So I think what you're getting at is like moving from one to the other.
Yeah.
More or less.
There's a lot more valuable, and there's a lot more value in having someone follow you because they believe in you as opposed to just because you're the manager.
Sure. Yeah.
So and also what that does for you is it not only breeds loyalty, but at the same time it incentivizes people to work harder for you because they believe in your goals and they align their goals with yours. And it just generally makes for a better interaction. You're sort of enjoying your job a little bit more when you know you have a better relationship with someone than if you were to just tell them, hey, go do this, and if you don't, you're fired. That's a really negative interaction. I would never want to do that.
Sure.
Sometimes it's necessary, but at the same time, I would very much rather have a relationship with someone that I'm directly influencing or managing, so to say, where it's a lot more positive as opposed to just do this.
It's just kind of a relationship based on the titles assigned by some random person.
Exactly. Some arbitrary title that doesn't really hold value. Especially with like a man, like I wouldn't necessarily, if I'm thinking about it myself, I wouldn't necessarily want to follow someone if they weren't able to do the job as effectively as I think I could do the job.
Sure.
If I'm able to outperform my manager, why would I have any incentive?
What's the need to have them around?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think leading from the front is definitely a big thing as well.
Yeah.
Not becoming complacent.
Sure.
Just because myself and you've been through it a lot longer than someone else has doesn't necessarily make me a better individual. It just means I've been around longer and I know what I'm doing.
I think there's a ton of value in getting your hands dirty as a manager.
Oh, yeah.
I think the stories of back in my day I did X, Y, and Z, they only go so far. You know what I mean?
And I don't have that many back in my day stories.
Even so, you bring somebody newer into your team and your market here, and you say, back in my day I did X, Y, and Z, so you should listen to me. That's cool for a minute until it wears off. I think there's a ton of value in, I did this, here's how the job is performed, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Watch me execute.
And here's an interesting thing about that is you bring up a good point. When I first got into the business, I thought it was really cool to be able to say, I did that.
Right.
Just because I wanted to say I did that.
Yeah.
But when you actually have done it and you're able to speak on it, you become a lot more passionate about speaking on it.
Yeah.
Because you've been through it and you genuinely want that person to be better.
To do well,
Yeah, and I think that's where my so high comes from in this job, is I don't necessarily look at myself as a manager, like a type A manager per se. I'd rather relate to my guys and speak passionately on the experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
and see if they can actually apply that information.
I think people know whether you care pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know,
They do.
I think I always tell people, they say usually like, what's the hardest thing about management, or what do you have to be good at to manage people or to train somebody on a task? I say I think half the battle is caring. Like if you care about the individual, if you're underqualified, you're gonna be fine. Like even if you're not that good at your job, but you really want the people working with you to succeed at whatever the task is, that's so much of the battle. It really
people
is.
pick up on the passion.
It
as
really
opposed to
do.
just- yeah. No, I completely agree with you. It's relating to people is the toughest thing to get down.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely the largest learning curve.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think Joe and I could go on for like another hour if you wanted to. Are there any like cool? Cool. Well, here's what we'll do. Anything else you want to add, throw out there, anything like that? We can wrap up here.
No, I mean you're the interviewer, man. I was
I'm just the co-signer.
I was just gonna sort of let you run with it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, nothing in particular. Cool. I mean, I don't
Good
need
stuff.
to like.
We'll call it.
About myself
The beer's
more.
almost empty. How's yours?
Oh, I've been sitting it down.
You've been talking a lot?
No, I got a decent amount.
All right. Well,
It's
you have a
actually
decent
beer
amount?
too.
Well, I know it is. Yeah, we preempted that in the beginning. Well, cool. We can wrap then. Thanks for hanging out with us. You've jumped on. You know, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, feel free to shoot them our way. What were we saying? Oh yeah. Next episode we're going to do from Baltimore. I'll be interviewing. A fellow industry peer, somebody that's running a pretty big organization that partners with us out of Baltimore. He's going to have a ton of advice on growing your business and his experiences. He's somebody that's traveled the country a good bit, and kind of brings a different perspective to our organization. So look forward to that next time. But other than that, thanks for hanging out. See you next time.
Take it easy.
Cheers, man. Episode 5 in the books.
Yeah, there it is.